When exhausted paramedic and single mother Olivia Reeves purchased a dilapidated 1870s barn in rural Colorado for $54,000, using her life savings and a small loan from her brother to finally provide a stable home for her twin daughters. She never imagined that clearing decades of debris from the basement would uncover a mysterious steel vault with no visible opening mechanism, attract the attention of historical artifact specialists from the Smithsonian Institution, reveal a connection to one of America's most infamous train robberies of the 1890s, link her property to a network of hidden Prohibition-era smuggling routes, connect her to descendants of legendary outlaw Jesse Clayton, discover her great-grandfather's secret role as a Treasury Department operative tracking stolen gold, and transform her from an overworked first responder to the reluctant guardian of what museum curators are now calling one of the most significant lost treasure sites in American frontier history. Before we dive deeper into this extraordinary story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you find yourself captivated by hidden history, make sure to hit subscribe, because next week I'll show you the actual code-breaking technique that finally opened this mysterious vault after 130 years. The "For Sale by Owner" sign on the abandoned Willow Creek property had been weathering for nearly 2 years before Olivia Reeves spotted it while driving home from another exhausting 12-hour shift at Mountain Valley Medical Center. 3 consecutive years of working double shifts had left permanent shadows under her eyes, but sleep remained elusive as rental prices in Summit County continued to rise well beyond what her paramedic's salary could sustain. "Just 6 more months," she whispered to herself as she slowed her truck to examine the crooked sign with its faded phone number. The mantra had become less convincing each time she repeated it to her daughters. Her phone chimed with a text from her babysitter, another reminder of the mounting expenses that kept her working relentless hours while still falling behind. At 34, Olivia had built a respectable life for herself and her 9-year-old. Twin daughters, Zoe and Lily, despite the challenges of raising them alone after her husband's death in a climbing accident 4 years earlier. His life insurance had sustained them initially, but rising costs and unexpected medical bills had steadily eroded their financial security. The small 2-bedroom apartment they'd called home for the past 3 years had just received notice of another substantial rent increase, making their already stretched budget impossible to maintain. On impulse, Olivia pulled over and took a photo of the sign. The property looked abandoned, an old farmstead with a massive timber frame barn dominating the 3-acre lot. The farmhouse itself had burned down decades ago, according to local law, but the barn's stone foundation and massive oak beams had survived years of neglect. She'd driven past it countless times without really seeing it, but now, with housing desperation mounting, she found herself wondering about possibilities. That evening, after tucking the twins into bed, Olivia called the number on the sign, expecting it to be disconnected. Instead, an elderly man answered on the second ring. "Wilcox Property," the voice stated gruffly. "I'm calling about the "For Sale" sign," Olivia replied. "Is the property still available?" "Been available for 2 years," the man said. "Name's Harold Wilcox. Property's been in my family for generations, but I'm the last one left and too old to maintain it. Been trying to sell since moving to assisted living." "I'd like to see it," Olivia said, surprising herself with her decisiveness. Harold agreed to meet her the following afternoon. After arranging childcare with a neighbor, Olivia arrived at the property with minimal expectations but growing curiosity. The elderly man who greeted her moved slowly with a walker but had alert eyes that assessed her with surprising sharpness. "Most folks take one look at the barn and keep driving," he said, handing her a ring of ancient keys. "Need someone with vision to see past the current condition." Up close, the barn was simultaneously worse and better than it had appeared from the road. The exterior weatherboarding had failed in multiple places, exposing structural timbers to the elements. Several windows were broken or missing entirely, and the massive sliding doors hung precariously from rusted tracks. Yet the core structure, the hand-hewn oak frame, the stone foundation, and the central supporting columns remained, remarkably solid after 150 years. Original settlers built it in 1872, Harold explained, as they carefully entered through a side door. My great-grandfather acquired it in 1899. Family legend says he bought it with gold coins, no mortgage. Always been a bit of mystery where that money came from. Inside, sunlight streamed through gaps in the siding, illuminating a cavernous interior with soaring ceilings. The main level featured the expected arrangement of former stalls and storage areas, thick with dust and abandoned farm implements. A wooden staircase led to a hayloft that spanned half the upper level, while a steeper set of stairs descended to what Harold called the root cellar and workshop, buildings twice the size anyone would need for a standard farm operation, Harold noted, as Olivia examined the craftsmanship of the joinery. Family story says it was designed to accommodate more than just agricultural purposes, though nobody remembered exactly what. Olivia ran her hand along a massive oak beam, feeling the adze marks left by craftsmen generations ago. The structure seems surprisingly sound despite the neglect. Oak from old-growth forests, Harold explained, not the quick-grown timber they use nowadays. These beams were cut from trees that had been growing for a century or more. That's why the frame hasn't failed, despite everything else falling apart. They continued through the barn, Harold pointing out original features and sharing fragments of family history associated with different areas. The tour ended at the main doors, which creaked ominously when he demonstrated their operation. "What's the asking price?" Olivia asked, mentally calculating renovation costs against her limited resources. "Properties assessed at $115,000 for the land alone," Harold replied. "Been asking $85,000, but nobody's been interested given the condition. At this point, I'd take $65,000 just to be done with it." Olivia felt her heart sink. Even the reduced price was beyond her means. "That's probably outside my budget," she admitted. Harold studied her face. "You got kids?" The question surprised her. "Twin daughters. They're 9. He nodded slowly. "Planning to renovate yourself or flip it?" "Live in it. Convert the barn into a home. Rental prices are making it impossible to stay in the county otherwise, and my daughters love their school." Something in her response seemed to satisfy him. "Tell you what, I've watched developers circle this property for years, planning to bulldoze everything and build vacation homes. I'd rather see someone preserve the barn, make me an offer." That evening, Olivia reviewed her finances with brutal honesty. Between her savings, a small loan her brother had offered when he learned of their housing crisis, and selling her second vehicle, she could potentially offer $54,000, still well below Harold's already reduced asking price. She drafted a careful email explaining her situation and plans to preserve the historic structure while creating a home for her family. After several revisions, she attached photos of her daughters and herself, hoping to convey their need and commitment, then sent her modest offer with low expectations. Morning brought the twins' usual energetic preparations for school, momentarily distracting Olivia from thoughts of the barn. As she packed their lunches, Lily noticed her distraction. "Mom, are you worried about something?" she asked, demonstrating the perceptiveness that often caught Olivia off guard. "Just thinking about possibilities," Olivia answered, deciding to share at least part of her thoughts. "I saw an old barn yesterday that might make an amazing home for us." "A barn?" Zoe asked skeptically, looking up from her breakfast cereal. "Like where animals live?" "Not exactly," Olivia laughed. "It would need lots of work, But barns can be converted into beautiful homes with open spaces and character. It's probably just a dream, though. I don't think my offer will be accepted. I'd like to live in a barn, Lily declared, imagination immediately engaged. I could have a bedroom in the hayloft with a rope swing down to the main floor. No rope. Swings in the house, Olivia replied automatically, then caught herself. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's a long shot. After dropping the girls at school, Olivia headed straight to her shift at the medical center, the familiar routine of emergency calls and patient care temporarily pushing real estate concerns from her mind. It wasn't until her lunch break that she checked her phone and saw a missed call from Harold Wilcox. Her hands trembled slightly as she returned the call, preparing herself for rejection. "Ms. Reeves," Harold's voice answered after a single ring, "been thinking about your offer." "I understand if it's too low," Olivia began, "but it's honestly the best I can—" "I'll take it," he interrupted. 54,000, cash, quick closing. "But I have two conditions." Olivia almost dropped her phone. "What conditions?" "First, I want right of first refusal if you ever decide to sell. Not for me, I'll be long gone, but for my historical records. That barn has stories that shouldn't be lost. And the second condition, I want to see it when you've finished. The conversion. Photos will do if I can't make it in person. Been visualizing that place as a proper home for decades, just never had the resources or energy to do it myself." Yes, absolutely," Olivia stammered. "I'd be happy to keep you updated on the renovation." "Good. My lawyer will draw up the papers. We can close in 2 weeks if that works for you." That evening, after sharing the unexpected news with the twins, Lily immediately ecstatic, Zoe cautiously optimistic, Olivia called her brother Ryan to update him. "So you actually bought a barn?" he asked, amusement mixing with concern in his voice. "And you're going to live in it? With the girls?" "It's structurally sound," Olivia defended. "The frame is solid oak, and the foundation is intact. It needs work, but it's standing after 150 years of Colorado winters. That says something. What about plumbing, electricity, heat?" Ryan pressed, his practical engineering mind focusing on essentials. "All need to be installed or upgraded," she admitted. "But the property has water rights, and the electrical lines run right along the road frontage. I've been researching barn conversions. It's actually becoming quite common. On extreme home makeover, maybe, with teams of professionals and corporate sponsors," Ryan pointed out. "Not single mums working 60-hour weeks as paramedics." "I've thought this through," Olivia insisted. "I've calculated costs for creating a basic living space first, then expanding as funds allow. Several of my colleagues have construction experience and have offered to help. Juan Rodriguez's brother is a licensed contractor who's willing to advise us on weekends." Ryan's sigh carried through the phone. "You know I'll help too. Not just with the loan, but with the actual work. Emily and I can drive up from Denver on weekends." "I was hoping you'd say that," Olivia admitted. "Your engineering skills might come in handy with some of the structural challenges." 6 weeks. Later, after navigating paperwork, loan arrangements, and pragmatic planning, Olivia stood in the center of the massive barn, now officially her massive barn, wondering if she'd made the most courageous decision of her life or the most foolish. Initial inspection had revealed no critical structural issues despite the cosmetic deterioration. The timber frame, handcrafted from old-growth oak in the 1870s, remained remarkably sound. The stone foundation showed no significant cracking or settlement. Even the roof, while requiring extensive repairs, had protected the core structure from catastrophic water damage. "We did it, girls," she told her daughters as they explored their new property that first evening, the sunset casting long shadows through the barn's western windows. "It's going to take a lot of work, but this is ours. No more rent increases, no more moving every few years." Zoe remained cautious, poking at weathered boards with practical concern. "Where are we going to sleep until it's fixed?" "I've arranged for us to stay in Mrs. Peterson's guest cottage for the first 2 months while we make the barn weather-tight and create one livable section," Olivia explained, having negotiated the temporary housing with a grateful former patient. "We'll start with the basics, a kitchen, bathroom and sleeping area, and expand from there as we can afford it." Lily, meanwhile, had already claimed the hayloft as her future bedroom, spinning elaborate plans for skylights and a reading nook overlooking the main space. Her enthusiasm provided a counterbalance to her sister's pragmatism and Olivia's occasional moments of panic at the magnitude of the project they'd undertaken. The weeks that followed became a crash course in construction basics as Olivia balanced her paramedic shifts with demolition and renovation work. Colleagues from the medical center, impressed by her determination, began stopping by after shifts to help. Marco's brother Juan provided weekend guidance on structural repairs, teaching Olivia and several other volunteers how to properly replace damaged timbers without compromising the barn's integrity. Ryan and his wife Emily arrived for the first of many weekend work sessions, bringing tools, supplies, and Ryan's engineering expertise. The family connection brought a sense of continuity to the project that helped sustain Olivia through moments of doubt. "Dad would have loved this project," Ryan commented as they worked together replacing broken windows. "Remember how he was always tinkering with some renovation at our house? He'd have had this place transformed in half the time," Olivia agreed, remembering their father's carpentry skills, "and probably with half the budget too." Progress came in exhausting increments. Weather-tight windows replaced broken panes. New siding covered the worst gaps in the exterior. A basic electrical system brought reliable power to the structure for the first time in decades. Plumbing proved more challenging, requiring extensive trenching to connect to the rural water system that had been installed along the road years after the property was abandoned. It was during the excavation for the septic system that they encountered the first suggestion that the barn held secrets beyond its agricultural origins. The backhoe operator, digging the required distance from the foundation, struck something solid that didn't match the surrounding soil composition. "Looks like an old path or road," he called out, pointing to what appeared to be a deliberately constructed surface about 3 feet below grade. "See how these stones are laid? That's not natural formation." Olivia examined the uncovered section. Flat stones fitted together to form what indeed appeared to be a narrow roadbed leading from the barn's foundation toward the hills behind the property. "Maybe an old farm lane," she suggested. The operator shook his head. "Farm lanes don't usually get stone paving, especially not this far underground. And look at the direction. It's heading away from the main road, toward nothing but wilderness nowadays." Ryan knelt at the edge of the excavation, examining the stonework. "This is deliberate construction, not just cleared fieldstone. Someone invested significant effort creating this. Any idea where it leads?" "It continues under your property, toward the ridge line," the operator replied, pointing toward the forested hills. "Based on the angle, it might connect to the old mining district about 5 miles over that ridge." The discovery was interesting, but not immediately relevant to their urgent renovation needs. Olivia photographed it before the septic work continued, filing it away as another curious aspect of their historic property. By the end of the first month, they had created a basic living space in one corner of the main level, a temporary kitchen, with essential appliances, a bathroom with functioning fixtures, and a partitioned sleeping area with air mattresses that the twins declared just like camping. The arrangement was primitive but functional, allowing them to move out of Mrs. Peterson's cottage and officially take up residence in their still-evolving home. "It's not much yet," Olivia acknowledged, as they ate their first dinner at a folding table in their makeshift kitchen, rain drumming on the partially repaired roof above them. "But it's ours," Lily declared with surprising certainty for a 9-year-old. "And no one can make us move," Zoe added, revealing that the housing insecurity of recent years had affected her more deeply than Olivia had realized. With basic shelter established, Olivia turned her attention to the lower level, the area Harold had described as the root cellar and workshop. Unlike the relatively open layout of the main floor, this space had been divided into several rooms of varying sizes, their purposes not immediately obvious. One contained the expected root cellar, features stone walls with built-in shelving for food storage. Another had clearly served as a workshop, with a sturdy workbench built against one wall and tool storage areas. But the third room, located in the northeast corner of the foundation, presented a puzzle. Unlike the rough stone walls elsewhere, in the basement, its walls had been constructed with precisely cut granite blocks fitted together with remarkable skill. The floor featured similar stonework rather than the packed earth or concrete of other areas. Most notably, there was no obvious purpose for such careful construction in what would normally be utilitarian farm space. "This couldn't have been just storage," Olivia remarked to Ryan and Juan as they cleared decades of accumulated debris from the room. Too much effort went into building it. "Definitely not standard construction for the period," Juan agreed, examining the stonework. "This is mason-quality work, not typical farm construction. Almost reminds me of bank vaults I've seen in historic buildings." Ryan tapped various sections of the wall, listening carefully to the sounds. "These walls are solid, no hollow spaces behind them, but the construction quality is completely different from the rest of the foundation. Someone invested serious resources in this room specifically." This observation lingered in Olivia's mind as they continued clearing the space. The debris included rotted wooden furniture, rusted metal containers, and layers of dust and organic matter that had accumulated. Through years of neglect, the work was tedious but necessary to properly assess the space for potential conversion into additional living area. As they removed the final layer of debris from the floor, Zoe, who had been helping sort salvageable items, called out in excitement, "Mom, there's something under this rug." The rug was actually the decomposed remains of what had once been a heavy canvas covering. As Olivia carefully pulled away the fragile material, her breath caught at what it revealed: a large circular metal plate set into the stone floor, approximately 4 feet in diameter, with no visible hinges or handles. The metal appeared to be steel rather than iron, with minimal corrosion despite its age. Around its circumference ran a series of strange markings, not letters or numbers in any conventional sense, but deliberate symbols cut into the metal with precision. "It's like a giant manhole cover," Zoe observed, kneeling for a closer look. "Or a vault door," Juan added, recalling his earlier comparison to bank construction. Ryan immediately shifted into analytical mode, examining the metal plate from multiple angles. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary," he observed. "The fit between the metal and stone is precision work. We're talking tolerances of less than a millimeter. This wasn't made by local blacksmiths in the 1870s. Lily, who had been watching from the doorway, approached cautiously. "Is it treasure, like in the movies?" "Probably just a cistern or storage pit," Olivia suggested practically, though the quality of construction seemed excessive for such mundane purposes. Ryan attempted to pry the edge with various tools, but the metal plate remained firmly in place. "Whatever this is, it wasn't meant to be opened easily. There's no conventional locking mechanism that I can see, no keyhole, no combination dial, nothing that indicates how it's secured." As they continued examining the mysterious floor plate, Olivia noticed something else, a small recess in the stone wall directly above it, approximately at eye level. The squared cutout, about 3 inches on each side and 4 inches deep, contain no obvious mechanics, but seem deliberately placed in relation to the floor plate. "It's like it's waiting for something to be inserted," she observed, shining her flashlight into the empty space, a key or tool of some kind. That evening, after the twins were asleep in their temporary beds, Olivia researched historic barn construction in Colorado, finding nothing that explained the unusual features they'd discovered. On impulse, she sent photos of the stone room and metal plate to the Colorado Historical Society, inquiring whether such features were common in barns of that era. The response came surprisingly quickly the next morning, not from a staff member but from the director herself. "Dr. Eleanor Matthews, Ms. Reeves, the features you've discovered are definitely not standard agricultural construction for the period. The quality of the stonework and the presence of the sealed metal plate suggest a specialized purpose beyond normal farm operations. The location and approximate date of your barn's construction coincide with several historical narratives of interest to our researchers. Would it be possible for me to visit your property with a small team next week? These features may have significant historical importance beyond their curiosity value." Olivia forwarded the email to Ryan, who called her immediately. "A personal visit from the director of the Historical Society? That's unusual to say the least," he said. "Whatever you've uncovered, it's clearly more significant than an old storage cellar." "Should I be concerned?" Olivia asked, suddenly wondering about potential complications to her renovation plans. "Could this affect our ability to continue converting the barn?" "Hard to say without knowing what they think it is," Ryan replied. "But historical significance could work both ways. It might create preservation requirements, but it could also open up grant funding for restoration. I'd definitely meet with them." Olivia scheduled the visit for the following Tuesday, when she had a rare day off from the medical center. She spent the intervening days continuing work on the main level, though her thoughts repeatedly returned to the mysterious metal plate and what might lie beneath it. The night before the Historical Society visit, she found herself sitting alone in the stone room, studying the strange symbols that encircled the metal plate. They didn't match any alphabet or numbering system she recognized, not Roman numerals, not Chinese characters, not anything she could identify from her limited knowledge of historical scripts. Yet they clearly represented some form of communication, deliberate, precise, and carefully executed. The symbols appeared to be organized in groups, with subtle spaces or dividing marks between clusters, some repeated in patterns that suggested language rather than random decoration. As she traced one symbol with her finger, a curved line intersecting, with 3 short marks, she found herself wondering about the people who had created this enigmatic feature, who had invested such effort in this hidden room with its sealed access point. What had they considered valuable enough to protect with such sophisticated construction? And why had its purpose been lost to the recent owners, including Harold's family, who had possessed the property for over a century? Sitting back on her heels, Olivia surveyed the strange combination of frontier architecture and sophisticated engineering. Her practical plan to provide affordable housing for her family had unexpectedly connected her to a historical mystery that apparently warranted attention from professional historians and researchers. "Well," she said aloud to the empty room, "you've certainly complicated my renovation budget." As she headed upstairs to check on her sleeping daughters, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that the barn she'd purchased out of financial necessity was about to become something far more complicated and potentially more significant than she had ever imagined when she first noticed that weathered "for sale" sign. Tuesday morning dawned clear and crisp, the autumn air carrying the first hints of the Colorado winter to come. Olivia had arranged for the twins to go directly to a friend's house after school, anticipating that the meeting with the Historical Society representatives might extend beyond the normal school day. By 9:30, she had cleared the makeshift kitchen table, prepared coffee, and made one last effort to bring some order to their partially renovated living space. At precisely 10 o'clock, a convoy of 3 vehicles wound up the rutted driveway, a sedan bearing official state government plates, followed by a rugged SUV loaded with equipment and a vintage truck that seemed oddly appropriate for visitors interested in historical structures. Olivia watched from the main doors as 5 individuals emerged, their expressions shifting from professional composure to undisguised fascination as they took in the massive timber frame structure. Dr. Eleanor Matthews, instantly recognizable, from her official photo on the Historical Society website, approached with confident strides. In her early 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and alert eyes behind stylish glasses, she carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to leading excavations and research teams. "Ms. Reeves, I'm Eleanor Matthews. Thank you for accommodating our visit on such short notice." Her handshake was firm, her assessment of Olivia quick but thorough. "This is quite an impressive structure you've acquired." Olivia introduced herself properly, then gestured toward the barn. "It's still very much a work in progress, as you can see. We've only been renovating for about 6 weeks. You've accomplished a remarkable amount in that time," Dr. Matthews observed, genuinely impressed. Most people would be intimidated by a conversion project of this scale. She introduced her team, Dr. Thomas Harrington, an architectural historian specializing in 19th century frontier construction; Sarah Chen, an archaeologist focused on Western mining settlements; Miguel Vasquez, a preservation specialist; and finally, with a slightly different tone, James Blackwood, a colleague with expertise in certain specialized aspects of frontier history. Something in her introduction of Blackwood caught Olivia's attention. Unlike the other team members, who carried obvious equipment, cameras, notebooks, measuring devices, Blackwood traveled light with just a small leather case. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, fit and observant, his handshake revealing calluses inconsistent with purely academic work. "Dr. Matthews mentioned you discovered unusual features in the lower level," Blackwood prompted after the initial pleasantries. "Yes, a specially constructed room with what appears to be some kind of sealed vault or access point in the floor," Olivia confirmed, leading them toward the stairs. "It's completely different from the standard construction elsewhere in the foundation." As they descended to the basement level, Dr. Harrington commented on the quality of the timber framing visible in the structural supports. "Classic mortise and tenon joinery, hand-hewn from old-growth oak. You don't see craftsmanship like this anymore. The builders knew exactly what they were doing." "The foundation dates to 1872, according to the previous owner," Olivia explained, as they reached the lower level. "His great-grandfather acquired the property in 1899, apparently paying with gold coins, which seemed unusual to me." At this, Sarah Chen and Dr. Matthews exchanged meaningful glances. 1899 is an interesting year for large gold transactions in this region, Chen noted, just after several significant events in Colorado mining history. Olivia led them through the root cellar and workshop areas, both of which drew professional interest, but no particular surprise from the visitors. When they reached the third room with its precision stonework, however, the atmosphere changed. Perceptibly, the team fell silent, each member studying different aspects of the construction with heightened attention. "This is exceptional masonry," Dr. Harrington finally said, running his hand along the precisely fitted granite blocks. "Not frontier construction at all. This is the work of skilled European or Eastern craftsmen." Miguel Vasquez was already photographing specific features, muttering measurements and technical observations into a small recorder. "The ceiling uses a modified barrel vault technique, extremely strong and stable. This room was built to last centuries," Sarah Chen had immediately focused on the metal plate in the floor, kneeling to examine the strange symbols around its circumference. "These are definitely not standard numerals or letters," she confirmed, photographing each section in sequence. "The pattern appears deliberate rather than decorative, but it was James Blackwood's reaction that most caught Olivia's attention. He had frozen momentarily upon entering the room, his eyes widening slightly before his expression returned to careful neutrality. Now he moved methodically around the space, examining the walls, ceiling, and particularly the small recess Olivia had noticed above the metal plate. "Have you attempted to open this access point?" he asked, his tone conversational yet precisely focused. "My brother Ryan tried various tools, but there's no obvious mechanism, no handle, no keyhole. Nothing that indicates how it's secured," Olivia explained. "The fit is so precise, there's barely room to insert even the thinnest pry bar." Dr. Matthews had been observing both the room and her colleagues' reactions. "Miss Reeves, what you've discovered here is highly unusual and potentially quite significant. This type of construction, particularly the secured access point, bears striking similarities to certain specialized vault systems used in the late 19th century, primarily by financial institutions and occasionally by government agencies." "In a barn in rural Colorado?" Olivia questioned skeptically. "That's precisely what makes it so intriguing," Dr. Matthews confirmed. "The location, disguised purpose, and sophisticated security features suggest something well beyond normal agricultural storage." Blackwood had completed his examination of the small recess in the wall. "This aperture appears designed for a specific key or activation device," he observed. "Custom security systems like this were extremely rare and prohibitively expensive. In the 1870s, they were typically reserved for high-value or sensitive contents." "Like what?" Olivia asked. The team members exchanged glances before Dr. Matthews responded. "Based on the location, construction period, and certain historical events in this region, we have several working theories. The most probable involves connection to significant gold or silver transport during Colorado's mining boom, or government security operations during a period of substantial economic instability," Blackwood added, his tone suggesting this was a discussion continued from earlier conversations. "The symbols are particularly interesting," Chen interjected, still studying the circular pattern. "They appear to follow a specific sequence, possibly a sophisticated combination system rather than requiring a physical key." As the experts continued their assessment, Olivia found herself increasingly intrigued by the potential history hidden literally beneath her new home. "When the backhoe was digging for our septic system, we uncovered what appeared to be a stone-paved road or path leading from the barn toward the ridgeline," she mentioned. "The operator said it might connect to the old mining district about 5 miles over the ridge." This information electrified the team. "An underground paved road?" Dr. Matthews asked sharply. "Running east toward the Morrison Ridge mines?" "Yes, that's the direction," Olivia confirmed, surprised by the intensity of their reaction. "I have photos if you'd like to see them." While the others continued examining the vault room, Dr. Matthews followed Olivia upstairs to view the photos on her laptop. As they scrolled through the images, the historian's excitement became increasingly evident. "Ms. Reeves, these features, the vault room, the hidden road, align remarkably with certain historical accounts we've been researching for years." She hesitated before continuing. "Are you familiar with the Great Western Express robbery of 1893? Olivia shook her head. "I don't think so. It was one of the most significant heists in Western history. Over $300,000 in gold bullion and currency stolen from a secure transport between Denver and San Francisco. Today, that would be worth approximately $9 million. Dr. Matthews pulled up a historical document on her tablet. What made it extraordinary was that the missing shipment was never recovered, despite extensive manhunts and investigations. And, you think it's connected to my barn somehow? The primary suspect was an outlaw named Jesse Clayton, who operated throughout this region. Clayton was never captured, and neither was the gold. Historical evidence suggests he had developed an elaborate network of hidden routes and storage locations across Colorado. She indicated the photos of the stone-paved road. These types of concealed pathways were his signature method for moving valuables undetected. The conversation was interrupted by James Blackwood calling up from the basement. "Eleanor, you should see this." They returned to find Blackwood examining a section of the granite wall that he had carefully cleaned of decades of grime. Under proper lighting, a small, previously invisible marking had become visible, what appeared to be two crossed mining picks with a distinctive star between them. "Clayton's mark," Dr. Matthews whispered, her professional composure momentarily slipping to reveal genuine excitement. "You're suggesting my barn was part of some outlaw's hidden network for storing stolen gold?" Olivia asked, finding it difficult to connect the practical agricultural structure above with elaborate criminal enterprises. "The evidence is compelling," Dr. Matthews confirmed. "The specialized vault construction, the hidden road, the location, on what would have been an isolated property well away from major settlements, but conveniently situated between several significant mining operations." "There's more we should discuss," Blackwood added, with a meaningful glance at Dr. Matthews. "Perhaps upstairs." Back in the makeshift kitchen, the team shared more details of their research as Olivia served coffee. The historical narrative they presented was simultaneously fascinating and concerning for a homeowner who had simply wanted affordable housing. Jesse Clayton wasn't merely a bank robber, Dr. Matthews explained. Historical evidence suggests he operated what amounted to an alternative banking system for miners who distrusted official financial institutions, which were often corrupt during that period. He provided secure storage and transport of gold and silver, taking a percentage as his fee. "So he was a criminal banker?" Olivia asked, trying to understand. "More of a necessary evil in an era when legitimate institutions failed to serve many working people," Sarah Chen clarified. "The Great Western Express robbery targeted a shipment that allegedly contained both government gold and the life savings of numerous mining families. Clayton's network included specially constructed secure locations like this one," Blackwood continued. "The engineering was sophisticated enough that even decades later, when authorities discovered some sites, they couldn't access the secured areas without destroying them completely." "Which raises an important question," Dr. Matthews said, fixing Olivia with a direct gaze. "If our theory is correct, there could be historically significant materials, possibly even valuable assets, secured within that vault. This creates certain legal and ethical considerations." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, suddenly concerned about her ownership rights. "Colorado law regarding historical artifacts and treasure troves is complex," Dr. Matthews explained carefully. "Items of significant historical importance may be subject to claims by various entities, the state, historical societies, even federal agencies, depending on their nature." "Are you saying I might not own whatever is down there, in my own home?" Blackwood interjected before Dr. Matthews could respond. "What Eleanor is trying to explain is that we should establish proper archaeological and historical protocols before attempting to access the vault. This protects everyone's interests and ensures proper documentation of whatever might be discovered." Olivia studied him more carefully. His knowledge seemed too specific, his manner too controlled for a typical academic historian. "Mr. Blackwood, what exactly is your field of expertise?" Dr. Matthews mentioned specialized aspects of frontier history. A brief silence fell before Blackwood answered. I consult with the Historical Society on certain security aspects of historical sites. My background includes both historical research and practical experience with period security systems. He's being modest, Dr. Matthews added. James is one of the few experts who has successfully opened similar historical vault systems without damaging them. His background in both engineering and historical security mechanisms is unique. The explanation sounded reasonable, yet Olivia sensed they weren't sharing everything. Before she could press further, the conversation was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching outside. "Are you expecting more visitors?" Dr. Matthews asked, glancing toward the window. "No, just your team," Olivia replied, rising to look outside. Two black SUVs with government plates had pulled up behind the Historical Society vehicles. 4 individuals emerged, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in business attire that seemed incongruous with the rural setting. "Is that—" Chen began, looking toward Blackwood with obvious concern. "Bureau of Land Management," Blackwood confirmed, his expression hardening. "Earlier than expected." Dr. Matthews turned to Olivia with unexpected urgency. "Ms. Reeves, this complicates matters. Whatever you do, don't mention the symbols around the vault or the Clayton marking to these people. Let me handle the conversation." Before Olivia could demand an explanation, a knock sounded at the main door. Confused but cooperative, she went to answer it, finding herself facing 4 individuals with professional demeanors and government identification. "Ms. Olivia Reeves," the woman asked, displaying credentials identifying her as Agent Diana Carson. "Bureau of Land Management, Special Resources Division. I'm Agent Carson. We're conducting an assessment of historical features on properties in this region that may fall under federal oversight regulations." "The Bureau of Land Management?" "My property isn't federal land," Olivia replied, genuinely confused. "Certain historical features can fall under federal jurisdiction, regardless of current property boundaries," one of the male agents explained smoothly. "Particularly those connected to interstate commerce or federal monetary systems from the territorial period." Dr. Matthews had approached behind Olivia. "Diana, this is unexpected. The Historical Society hasn't filed any preliminary reports yet. How did your office become aware of this site?" The 2 women exchanged looks that suggested previous acquaintance and perhaps professional rivalry. "Standard monitoring protocols, Eleanor. Your team's research interests trigger certain notifications. May we come in?" The next hour unfolded in a carefully choreographed dance of professional courtesy, overlaying obvious tension. The BLM agents toured the property, paying particular attention to the vault room, while Dr. Matthews and her team maintained a carefully neutral presentation of their preliminary findings. Olivia, following Dr. Matthews's lead, described discovering the unusual room during renovation without mentioning the specific markings or their possible connection to Jesse Clayton. Agent Carson and her team documented the vault with photographs and measurements, asking detailed questions about the property's history and Olivia's purchase. "Have you attempted to open this access point?" Agent Carson asked, examining the metal plate with controlled interest that reminded Olivia of Blackwood's earlier reaction. "No, there's no obvious mechanism," Olivia replied truthfully. "We've been focusing on making the main level habitable." Carson nodded, then addressed Dr. Matthews. "The Historical Society is documenting this site." "Preliminary assessment only," Dr. Matthews replied. "Ms. Reeves contacted us regarding these unusual architectural features. We're providing historical context to help with her renovation planning." After completing their examination, Agent Carson requested a private word with Olivia outside. As they stood near the government vehicles, Carson's professional demeanor softened slightly. "Ms. Reeves, I understand you purchased this property for residential conversion. not historical excavation. However, what you've discovered here may have significant historical implications that extend beyond state interests to federal jurisdiction. Meaning what, exactly? Olivia asked, maintaining her composure despite growing concerns. Meaning that before any attempt is made to access that vault or alter the historical features, my office needs to complete a formal assessment under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. We'll be requesting a temporary halt to any work in that specific area. You can't just stop my renovation, Olivia objected. This is my home, not a government archaeological site. Only the work involving the vault room, Carson clarified. The main conversion can continue. This is standard procedure for unexpected historical discoveries to ensure proper documentation and preservation. And if I refuse, Carson's expression remained professional but took on a harder edge. That would be unwise. Federal regulations provide significant penalties for unauthorized disturbance of protected historical features. We're prepared to obtain emergency injunctions if necessary, though I hope we can proceed cooperatively. After the BLM agents departed, with promises to deliver official documentation within 72 hours, Olivia returned to find the Historical Society team in intense but hushed conversation. They fell silent when she entered. "Would someone please explain what's really happening here?" she demanded. "First, I find a mysterious vault in my basement. Then the State Historical Society director shows up personally. Now federal agents are threatening me with injunctions. This is supposed to be a simple home renovation." Dr. Matthews sighed, exchanging glances with her colleagues before responding. "You're right. You deserve complete transparency." She gestured toward the table. "Please sit down. This is going to take some explanation." Over the next hour, Olivia learned that the situation was far more complex than initially presented. The vault in her basement wasn't just historically interesting. It was potentially one of the most significant lost historical sites connected to Western financial history. The Bureau of Land Management isn't just interested in historical preservation, Blackwood explained carefully. The Special Resources Division specifically monitors sites potentially connected to unrecovered government assets. "Government assets?" Olivia questioned. "The Great Western Express robbery I mentioned," Dr. Matthews continued. "The shipment included federal gold reserves being transported between regional Treasury offices. Approximately 40% of the stolen gold technically remains government property, even after 130 years, which explains their interest in securing the site," Chen added. "If that vault contains any portion of the missing shipment, federal agencies have standing claims." "But that makes no sense," Olivia protested. "If there really was stolen gold hidden here, surely the previous owners would have found it decades ago. That's what makes Clayton's security systems so remarkable," Blackwood replied. "They were specifically designed to remain sealed unless opened with the correct mechanism. No amount of force or conventional methods would work without destroying the contents. His vaults were legendary for their sophistication." "Several similar sites have been discovered over the decades," Dr. Matthews explained. "In most cases, attempts to force them open triggered destruction mechanisms that rendered the contents worthless or inaccessible. The few successfully opened vaults contained significant historical artifacts and valuables." "So what happens now?" Olivia asked, trying to process the implications for her home and renovation plans. "The BLM will issue a temporary work restriction." "For the vault room specifically," Dr. Matthews explained. "They'll conduct a formal assessment, likely taking several weeks. Meanwhile, we'd like to continue our historical documentation with your permission. And if I just want to seal up that room and forget about it, focus on creating a home for my daughters." The team exchanged uncomfortable glances before Blackwood answered. "That would be your right, but the federal interest has already been triggered. They can obtain court orders to access the site for assessment regardless of your preferences. There's another consideration, Dr. Matthews added gently. If that vault does contain historical artifacts or valuables, proper documentation and legal protocols protect your potential interests as the property owner. Colorado law includes provisions for discovery rights that could be significant. Olivia rubbed her temples, feeling the onset of a stress headache. This is overwhelming. I bought a barn to escape housing insecurity, not to become entangled in historical treasure disputes with federal agencies. I understand this is a lot to process, Dr. Matthews sympathized. But there's one more thing you should know before we leave. She hesitated, then continued. The name you mentioned, Harold Wilcox, the previous owner. We conducted some background research after you contacted us. His great-grandfather who purchased this property in 1899 was Harold Wilcox Sr., formerly Henry Wilson, before changing his name upon moving to Colorado. Why is that significant? Because Henry Wilson was documented as Clayton's primary associate. During the period of the Great Western Express robbery, the timing of his property purchase with gold coins aligns perfectly with the aftermath of those events. Olivia stared at her in disbelief. Are you saying I bought property from the descendants of one of the robbers? Historical records are incomplete, Dr. Matthews qualified, but the circumstantial evidence is compelling, which raises an interesting question about Harold's eagerness to sell to someone planning to preserve rather than demolish the structure, and his specific request for right of first refusal and documentation of your renovation. After the Historical Society team departed, promising to return with more comprehensive documentation resources, Olivia sat alone at her makeshift kitchen table, trying to reconcile the day's revelations with her practical needs and concerns. The renovation had already stretched her resources to their limits. Delays or complications could jeopardize their timeline for creating a fully functional living space before winter settled in. Yet ignoring the historical significance and potential legal complications seemed equally problematic. She called Ryan, summarizing the day's events as concisely as possible. Let me get this straight, he said after a long pause. Your basement might contain a specialized vault built by notorious outlaws, potentially holding stolen gold that's still claimed by the federal government, and now both state historians and federal agents are involved. That about covers it, Olivia confirmed. I just wanted an affordable place to live, Ryan, not a historical mystery with government entanglements. What are your options? Officially, I can continue renovation everywhere except the vault room while they conduct their assessments. Dr. Matthews suggested cooperating fully with the historical documentation might protect my interests if anything valuable is discovered. And unofficially? Olivia hesitated before sharing the strange undercurrent she'd sensed. Something odd is happening between the Historical Society team and the BLM agents. They clearly know each other, but there's obvious tension. Blackwood especially seems to have some background beyond academic history. He knows things about these security systems that seem unusually specific. What does your instinct tell you? After considering the question, Olivia answered slowly, that Dr. Matthews and her team are genuinely interested in the historical significance and proper documentation. The BLM agents seemed more focused on securing the site and establishing jurisdiction. There's some kind of professional competition happening, with my basement caught in the middle. Sounds like your best approach is maintaining communication with both groups while protecting your legal rights as the property owner, Ryan advised. I'll drive up this weekend. I want to see this vault myself, and we should probably consult with a lawyer who specializes in property rights and historical discoveries. That evening, after picking up the twins from their friend's house, Olivia debated how much to share with them about the day's events. Zoe, with her practical nature, would immediately worry about complications to their housing situation. Lily, imaginative and excitable, would likely be unable to think about anything else if told their basement potentially contained an outlaw's treasure vault. She compromised by explaining that historians had found the stone room historically interesting and would be helping document it properly while they continued renovating the rest of the barn. "Is it because of the metal thing in the floor?" Lily asked, immediately connecting to the mystery. "Yes, it appears to be an unusual type of secure storage from the 1800s, Olivia acknowledged. "The Historical Society wants to study it properly." "Will they open it?" Zoe asked, her practical mind going straight to the logical next step. "Eventually, perhaps. Right now, they're just documenting everything carefully." "I bet it's full of gold bars," Lily declared with absolute certainty. "From train robberies." Olivia nearly choked on her water, startled by how close her daughter's imagination had come to the historian's actual theory. "What makes you say that?" Lily shrugged. "I've been reading about Colorado history for my school project. There were lots of famous train robberies here, and outlaws had to hide their gold somewhere." Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Olivia found herself drawn back to the basement. Standing alone in the stone room, she examined the metal plate more carefully, studying the strange symbols that circled its perimeter. If Dr. Matthews was correct, these markings weren't merely decorative, but potentially the key to opening the vault, a sophisticated combination system designed over a century ago to protect whatever lay beneath. Running her fingers along the precisely cut granite blocks, she tried to imagine the effort involved in creating this hidden space. Someone had invested substantial resources in ensuring that whatever was stored here remained secure, even if the property changed hands or the knowledge of its purpose faded from memory. The small recess in the wall, the aperture Blackwood had examined so carefully, drew her attention. What device had been designed to fit that precise space? And where was it now after 130 years? As she turned to leave, her flashlight caught something she hadn't noticed before. A small irregularity in one of the granite blocks near the ceiling. Moving closer, she discovered it wasn't a flaw in the stone, but a deliberately carved marking, similar to the crossed mining picks they had found earlier, but with an additional element. What appeared to be a small key or tool floating above the intersection. Instinctively, Olivia knew this was significant, something neither the Historical Society team nor the BLM agents had noticed during their examinations. Whether it indicated the location of the opening mechanism or provided clues to its operation remained unclear, but its deliberate concealment suggested importance. She debated whether to immediately report the discovery to Dr. Matthews, but hesitated, wanting time to consider its implications. The competing interests surrounding her property had transformed a simple renovation into something far more complicated, with potential legal and financial ramifications she was only beginning to understand. Climbing the stairs back to the main level, Olivia felt the weight of unexpected responsibility settling on her shoulders. What had begun as a desperate solution to housing insecurity had connected her to historical events and present-day interests far beyond her anticipated home renovation challenges. For now, she would continue focusing on creating a stable home for her daughters while carefully navigating the competing historical and governmental interests in what lay beneath their feet. The vault had remained sealed for well over a century. It could wait a little longer while she determined the best path forward for her family. As she prepared for bed, Olivia's phone chimed with an email notification. The sender's name caused her to sit up straight. Harold Wilcox. The message was brief but unsettling. "Miss Reeves, I've been informed that certain historical features have been discovered during your renovation. Before proceeding further with any official agencies, I believe we should discuss some family history that wasn't appropriate to share during our initial transaction. My grandfather left specific instructions regarding that property to be shared only if certain discoveries were made. Please call at your earliest convenience. Some matters are best discussed directly rather than through official channels. Sleep proved elusive as Olivia pondered the implications of this message. Harold had sold her the property at a remarkably accommodating price, requiring only documentation of the renovation and right of first refusal if she ever sold. Now, with historical societies and federal agencies involved, he suddenly had specific instructions to share. Whatever secrets the Willow Creek barn held, they were clearly far more significant than she had imagined when she first noticed that weathered "for sale" sign. The simple haven she had sought for her family had become entangled with historical mysteries, federal interests, and what increasingly appeared to be deliberately preserved secrets spanning generations. Tomorrow, she would call Harold, continue her renovation work outside the restricted area, and try to maintain some normalcy for her daughters amid these unexpected complications. But one thing had become certain. The mysterious vault beneath her barn represented something far more significant than an architectural curiosity, and resolving its secrets would likely transform their lives in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. Thus, following morning, Olivia woke before dawn, her mind still processing the previous day's revelations and Harold's mysterious email. After sending the twins off to school with assurances that their renovation would continue as planned, she finally made the call she'd been both anticipating and dreading. Harold answered on the second ring, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. "Ms. Reeves, thank you for calling. Your email was concerning," Olivia replied, keeping her tone measured. "You mentioned specific instructions about the property." "Not over the phone," Harold said, his voice dropping. "Some things need to be discussed in person. Are you free this afternoon? I can have my nephew drive me out to the property." "Mr. Wilcox, I'm dealing with historical societies and federal agencies suddenly interested in my basement. If you have relevant information, I'd appreciate directness." There was a long pause before Harold responded. "My grandfather left a letter, to be opened only if someone found the secured room. For 3 generations no one did, or if they did, they never reported it. The letter contains information about the property's history and certain contents." "Contents of the vault, you mean?" "Yes, information about what's inside and potentially how to access it properly." Another pause. "Ms. Reeves, before the government stakes claims or historians rewrite the narrative, you deserve to know the family history from someone who's kept it for generations." Olivia considered her options. Harold's timing was suspicious, coming immediately after official interest had been established. Yet, if he genuinely had information about the vault's contents or access mechanism, it could prove invaluable in navigating the competing interest now surrounding her property. 2 o'clock, she decided. "I'll meet you here, but Mr. Wilcox, I expect complete honesty about why you sold me a property with such significant historical features without disclosing them." "That's fair," he conceded. "And for what it's worth, I sold it to you specifically because I believed you would care for the structure rather than demolish it. The historical features were something I was instructed to remain silent about, unless discovered naturally." After ending the call, Olivia immediately contacted Ryan, updating him on this new development. He offered to take the afternoon off to be present for Harold's visit, but clinic emergencies made that impossible. Instead, they agreed that she would record the conversation, with Harold's knowledge and consent. Her next call was to Dr. Matthews, feeling obligated to inform the historian about the previous owner's forthcoming visit. The archaeologist's reaction was immediate. Harold Wilcox is coming to discuss the vault today." Her tone held both professional interest and concern. "Olivia, this could be extremely significant. Family histories often contain crucial information, missing from official records, particularly regarding structures like this. You think he knows how to open it? It's certainly possible. Such knowledge was sometimes passed down through families with alternative banking arrangements, shall we say. Would you be comfortable if I joined you for this meeting?" His perspective, combined with our historical documentation, could prove invaluable. Olivia agreed, with the stipulation that Harold's consent would be required. Her final call was to Agent Carson at the Bureau of Land Management, a courtesy notification that felt politically necessary given the potential federal interest. Carson's response was predictably official. "Thank you for the notification, Ms. Reeves. We'd appreciate being updated about any significant historical information Mr. Wilcox provides. As previously discussed, no attempts should be made to access the vault until formal assessments are completed." With these notifications made, Olivia returned to practical renovation work on the main level, focusing on installing insulation in preparation for the approaching winter. Physical labor provided welcome distraction from the increasingly complicated situation unfolding around the mysterious vault. At precisely 2 o'clock, a late-model sedan pulled into the driveway, followed minutes later by Dr. Matthews' vehicle. Harold emerged slowly from the passenger seat, supported by a middle-aged man who introduced himself as Michael Wilcox, Harold's nephew and attorney. "Legal counsel?" Olivia questioned, instantly wary. "Standard practice when discussing family. Historical matters with potential financial implications," Michael explained smoothly. "I specialize in historical property rights and artifact disposition." After introductions and necessary permissions for recording the conversation, they gathered around Olivia's makeshift kitchen table. Harold placed an aged leather portfolio on the surface, his hands trembling slightly with what appeared to be both age and emotion. "Before I share what my grandfather entrusted to me, I want to explain why I sold you this property as I did," Harold began, his voice stronger than during their previous meetings. "Our family has maintained ownership for over 120 years, primarily as caretakers rather than typical property owners. Each generation was instructed to preserve the barn's structure without extensive renovation or exploration. That explains the minimal maintenance," Olivia noted, "but not why you didn't mention historical significance during the sale." Harold nodded acknowledgement. "The instructions were explicit. The property's true history was to remain undisclosed unless specific features were discovered naturally. The letter I'm about to share explains why." He opened the portfolio and removed a sealed envelope, yellowed, "With age, with 'to be opened only upon discovery,' written across the front in elegant script. With careful movements, he broke the seal and extracted several pages of handwritten text. "This was written by my grandfather, Harold Wilcox Sr., in 1944, shortly before his death. I'll read it verbatim. To my descendants and the future discoverer of the vault, if you are reading this letter, someone has uncovered the secured room beneath the barn, a discovery that activates certain responsibilities I have carried since acquiring this property in 1899. The official records show a simple land purchase, but the truth is considerably more complex. I was born Henry Wilson in 1868 in Missouri and came to Colorado in 1891, seeking mining opportunities. Through circumstances I will detail shortly, I became associated with Jesse Clayton during the period of 1892 to 1895. While history has painted Clayton as a mere outlaw, the truth is more nuanced. He operated what amounted to an alternative banking and security system for miners and working families who had been repeatedly defrauded by corrupt official institutions. the Great Western Express robbery of 1893, for which Clayton was primarily blamed, was in fact an operation to reclaim gold that had been illegally seized from independent miners through fraudulent assessments by officials working in collusion with certain corporate interests. What history records as stolen government gold was largely the rightful property of working families, consolidated for transport to California, where Clayton had arranged more equitable banking services. The secured vault beneath the barn was constructed in 1872 as part of a network of safe deposit locations throughout the region. After the 1893 operation, this particular vault was used to store specific assets intended for eventual return to their rightful owners or their descendants. My role was initially as a security associate, but after Clayton's disappearance in 1897 during a government manhunt, I assumed responsibility for this location, purchasing it officially in 1899 using a portion of the fees the network had legitimately earned. Changed my name to Harold Wilcox to distance myself from past associations, and have lived as a law-abiding citizen since, maintaining this property and the secured contents according to Clayton's established protocols. The assets within the vault are accompanied by detailed ledgers identifying rightful ownership, much of which would now pass to descendants. The vault's security system was specifically designed to prevent forced entry while allowing legitimate access through a proprietary combination mechanism. The unlocking device was separated from the vault itself as a security measure and is concealed within the property in a location known only to designated custodians. To my descendants, if someone else has discovered the vault, your responsibility is to assess their character and intentions. The combination device should only be revealed to someone who demonstrates commitment to historical truth and ethical disposition of the contents according to Clayton's documented intentions, not government agencies seeking to claim assets they never legitimately owned. To the discoverer, what you have found is not merely treasure but historical justice preserved through generations. The contents involve the rightful property of numerous families, carefully documented, which corrupt interests of the 1890s attempted to seize through pseudo-legal mechanisms. Whether you choose to pursue access or not, you have become connected to a historical narrative far different from official accounts. The decision about proceeding rests with the current generation of my family and the property's current owner. May wisdom guide your choices. Harold Wilcox Sr., formerly Henry Wilson. April 15th, 1944 Profound silence fell as Harold finished reading. Dr. Matthews appeared momentarily stunned, her historian's mind visibly recalibrating around this first-hand account that contradicted established historical narratives. Olivia struggled to process the implications for her property and the ethical dimensions suddenly thrust upon her. Michael Wilcox broke the silence. My great-grandfather's account aligns with certain historical revisions being considered by modern scholars. The 1890s were a period of significant conflict between independent miners and consolidated corporate interests, often with government agencies serving powerful financial entities rather than individual citizens. This is extraordinary, Dr. Matthews finally said, her professional composure returning. A first-hand account from a Clayton associate, preserved within the family rather than subjected to the bias of official records. The historical significance is immeasurable. What about the unlocking mechanism? Olivia asked, focusing on practical implications. The letter mentions it's hidden somewhere on the property. Harold nodded. That's the most complex aspect of my purpose here today. According to family instruction, revealing the location of the combination device carries significant responsibility. My grandfather was explicit that it should only be shared under specific circumstances. Which are? Olivia prompted. A formal agreement regarding the historical documentation and ethical disposition of the contents, Michael interjected, shifting into legal mode. The vault reportedly contains not just valuables, but detailed ownership records, essentially a historical trust that's been maintained for over 125 years. Dr. Matthews leaned forward, her excitement barely contained. Mr. Wilcox, the historical value of such documentation goes far beyond any material assets. It could fundamentally reshape our understanding of economic conflicts during Colorado's mining era. Precisely why proper handling is essential, Michael agreed. My uncle is prepared to reveal the location of the combination device, but only with certain assurances regarding how the contents will be managed once accessed. What exactly are you proposing? Olivia asked, sensing a carefully prepared legal imposition. Michael removed several documents from his briefcase. A three-party historical discovery agreement. The Colorado Historical Society would provide proper documentation and historical context. You, as property owner, would maintain certain property rights while acknowledging the historical trust nature of specific contents. And the Wilcox family would provide the access information while maintaining an advisory role in disposition decisions. And the federal interest? Olivia questioned. The Bureau of Land Management has already asserted potential claims. Harold's expression hardened. Government agencies have spent 130 years promoting a narrative that served powerful interests of the 1890s. Their claim to these assets was questionable then and remains so now. That's precisely why Clayton's security systems were designed to prevent forced access. Dr. Matthews appeared torn between historical excitement and professional obligations. While I find this account compelling and potentially transformative for historical understanding, I should note that as a state employee, I have certain reporting requirements regarding discovered artifacts, which is why our agreement acknowledges the need for proper historical documentation, Michael noted smoothly, but establishes priority based on the property's documented provenance rather than modern governmental claims based on contested historical narratives. As they discussed potential frameworks for proceeding, Olivia found herself in an unexpected position, mediating between family historical claims and institutional interests while trying to protect her own stake in a property, purchased for entirely different purposes. I need to consider this carefully, she finally said, and consult with my own legal representation. This goes far beyond my experience as a homeowner or paramedic. Of course, Harold acknowledged. We've preserved this knowledge for generations. A few more days won't matter. Before departing, however, he shared one additional piece of information. The combination device isn't actually a key in the conventional sense. It's what Clayton called a sequence template, essentially a decoder for the symbols around the vault's perimeter. When properly aligned with specific reference points, it reveals the correct activation sequence. And its location? Dr. Matthews couldn't resist asking. Harold smiled faintly. When we reach an agreement, I'll show you personally. It's been hidden in plain sight for over a century, in a place obvious, once you know where to look. After Harold and Michael departed, Dr. Matthews remained, her professional excitement warring with ethical considerations. Olivia, what you've stumbled into is potentially one of the most significant historical discoveries in Colorado in decades. A first-person account from a Clayton associate, preserved family records, and potentially intact documentation from an alternative financial system operated during a critical period of Western development. Along with competing legal claims and ethical questions I never imagined facing when I bought this property, Olivia added, feeling overwhelmed. This is where I should maintain professional neutrality, Dr. Matthews admitted. but I feel compelled to offer personal perspective. Historical narratives are typically written by those in power. Accounts like Harold Wilcox Sr.'s offer essential counter-perspectives that help us understand the complexity of historical events beyond simplified. Outlaws versus lawmen frameworks. You believe his account, that this was about returning miners' gold rather than simple robbery. Historical evidence increasingly supports more complex interpretations of many Western crimes during that period. Mining communities frequently operated outside official financial systems, specifically because those systems were demonstrably corrupt and predatory toward individual miners. Olivia considered this perspective, so I've bought property containing what amounts to a 130-year-old community bank vault built by supposed outlaws, containing disputed assets and historical records that could rewrite established narratives. That's remarkably accurate, Dr. Matthews confirmed with a slight smile, along with the accompanying ethical and legal complexities. After the historian departed, promising to research additional context for Harold's claims without filing official reports until they reached consensus on proceeding, Olivia spent the afternoon continuing renovation work while processing the day's revelations. By the time she picked up the twins from school, she had made one firm decision. She needed specialized legal counsel before proceeding further with either the Historical Society or the Wilcox family's proposed agreement. That evening, after the girls were occupied with homework, she called a law school friend who now specialized in historical property rights and artifact claims. After explaining the situation in detail, she received a recommendation for Catherine Vega, an attorney with specific experience in contested historical discoveries. If anyone can navigate the competing interests around your vault, it's Catherine, her friend assured her. She's handled several cases involving historical artifacts with disputed ownership between private citizens, state entities, and federal agencies. The following morning, Olivia arranged to meet with Catherine later that week, then continued renovation work on the barn's main level. The BLM's promised documentation arrived by courier, official papers restricting any disturbance to the vault. Room pending formal assessment under various federal regulations, along with a polite but firm letter from Agent Carson requesting notification of any attempts to access the secured vault. Ryan arrived Friday evening as promised, eager to examine the vault and hear about the week's developments firsthand. After the twins were asleep, Olivia led him to the basement, sharing Harold's letter and the competing interests now surrounding their renovation project. "This is unbelievable," Ryan said, examining the metal plate and its mysterious symbols. "You buy a barn for affordable housing and end up with a historical trust vault that might rewrite Western history. Only you live. Not exactly what I planned when I called about that for sale sign," she agreed ruefully. "Now I'm navigating between historians, federal agents, and descendants of outlaws, all while trying to get the main floor insulated before winter." Ryan knelt to examine the small recess in the wall above the vault. Harold mentioned a sequence template that decodes these symbols. Apparently, it's hidden somewhere on the property, in plain sight, according to him. The vault supposedly contains not just gold, but detailed records identifying rightful owners from the 1890s. "Fascinating from a historical perspective," Ryan acknowledged, "but potentially a legal nightmare for you as property owner. What's your gut feeling about Harold's account?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "It rings true, honestly. The level of detail and the preservation within family records suggests authenticity. And Dr. Matthews confirmed that historical understanding of that period has been evolving toward more complex interpretations of outlaws versus official authorities. So you're inclined to pursue the Wilcox family's approach rather than the government's? "I'm inclined to make decisions based on complete information and proper legal guidance," Olivia clarified. I'm meeting with a specialized attorney next week to understand my position as property owner before committing to anyone's preferred approach. Ryan nodded approval. Smart. Whatever's in that vault has remained secure for 130 years. It can wait a bit longer while you protect your interests. The following morning, as they worked on installing insulation in what would eventually become the twins' bedrooms, Lily approached with unexpected seriousness. "Mom, can I ask you something about the metal circle in the basement?" Olivia exchanged glances with Ryan before responding. "What about it, honey? Is it true it might have gold inside from train robberies? Mason at school said his dad works for the government and they're investigating our house because we found outlaw treasure." Olivia suppressed a flare of irritation at how quickly information had spread through their small community. The room in the basement has historical features that different experts are studying. That's all we know for certain right now. But Mr. Wilcox came to tell you something about it, right? I saw his car when I got home from school. Mr. Wilcox shared some family history about the property, Olivia acknowledged, deciding limited honesty was better than evasion. The barn is older than we realized and might have been used for different purposes over the years. Like a secret. Bank? Lily pressed. For miners who didn't trust regular banks? Olivia stared at her daughter in astonishment. Where did you hear that? I've been researching Colorado history for my school project, Lily reminded her. There were lots of conflicts between miners and big companies back then. Some people created alternative systems because they kept getting cheated. Once again, Olivia was startled by how closely her daughter's independent research aligned with Harold's account. That's actually a sophisticated historical understanding, Lily. Yes, some historical evidence suggests the barn might have been connected to alternative financial arrangements during the mining era. Cool, Lily beamed. Can I do my history project about our house? I could interview Dr. Matthews about the historical significance and maybe even Mr. Wilcox about his family connection. Before Olivia could formulate a response to this unexpected proposal, the sound of vehicles approaching drew their attention. Through the newly installed windows, they watched 3 official-looking SUVs pull into the driveway, followed by what appeared to be a specialized equipment truck. That's not the Historical Society, Ryan observed, as uniformed personnel began unloading gear. Looks like the BLM decided to accelerate their assessment timeline. Agent Carson approached the door, accompanied by several colleagues carrying documentation and equipment cases. Her expression remained professionally neutral as she greeted Olivia. "Miss Reeves, I apologize for the weekend arrival, but our assessment protocols have been expedited based on new information regarding potential historical significance. We have authorization to conduct non-invasive scanning of the vault area." "Today, what new information?" Olivia questioned, immediately suspicious about the timing following Harold's visit. "Reports of potential historical documentation within the secured area that may fall under federal archival jurisdiction," Carson replied smoothly. "May we proceed to the basement level?" Feeling outmaneuvered, but aware of the federal authorization, Olivia reluctantly led the team to the vault room. The agents immediately began setting up sophisticated scanning equipment, including what appeared to be ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging systems. "These are non-invasive assessment technologies," Carson explained, noting Olivia's concerned expression. "They allow us to document the vault's dimensions and potential contents without attempting access." As the team worked, Olivia pulled Ryan aside. "This timing can't be coincidence. Someone informed them about Harold's visit and his claims regarding the contents." "Question is, who?" Ryan replied quietly. "Dr. Matthews. Someone in town who overhead. Something or surveillance we haven't noticed?" While the federal team conducted their scans, Olivia received a text message from Dr. Matthews. "Just learned BLM accelerated their assessment. I did not inform them about Wilcox details. Can you call when they've finished? The scanning process took several hours, during which Olivia maintained polite but minimal cooperation, answering direct questions while volunteering nothing about Harold's historical account or the supposed sequence template hidden somewhere on the property. As the team packed their equipment, Agent Carson approached with what appeared to be preliminary results displayed on a tablet. Our initial scans confirm a secured space approximately 8 feet in diameter beneath the floor plate, extending approximately 7 feet down. The vault appears to contain multiple objects of varying density, consistent with both metal items and paper or leather-bound materials. So there really is something down there, Ryan commented, viewing the ghostly images. Unquestionably, Carson confirmed. The construction is remarkably sophisticated for the period. Reinforced walls, what appears to be a secondary security mechanism, and careful environmental controls that have likely preserved the contents. What happens next? Olivia asked. We'll analyze these scans more thoroughly and prepare a detailed assessment report, Carson explained. Based on these preliminary findings, the site definitely warrants formal historical protection under federal guidelines. After the federal team departed, Olivia immediately called Dr. Matthews, who arrived within 30 minutes, visibly concerned about the accelerated federal interest. This is exactly the scenario Harold Wilcox was worried about, the historian noted, after hearing about the scanning operation. Federal agencies asserting authority based on disputed historical claims. How would they even know about Harold's account? Olivia questioned. I only informed Agent Carson that he was visiting, not what he shared. Small communities have many eyes and ears, Dr. Matthews replied. Or perhaps they've been monitoring the Wilcox family for generations, given their historical connection. To Clayton, intelligence agencies have long memories for unresolved cases, particularly those involving what they consider government assets. So what's my best approach now? The BLM clearly isn't waiting for our deliberate timeline. Dr. Matthews considered the question carefully. Your meeting with Catherine Vega becomes even more critical. From a historical perspective, I believe we should accelerate our documentation efforts before federal intervention potentially limits access or imposes restrictive protocols. And Harold's offer regarding the combination device? That's ultimately your decision as property owner, but I would at least hear his complete proposal before federal constraints potentially eliminate options. After Dr. Matthews departed, Olivia and Ryan discussed their options late into the evening. The situation had evolved from an interesting historical discovery into what felt increasingly like a contest between competing historical narratives with significant legal and ethical implications. Whatever we decide, Ryan advised, we need to move deliberately but not rush into agreements with any party. Your attorney consultation should happen before any commitments. The problem is that events seem to be accelerating without my input, Olivia pointed out. The BLM showed up with scanning equipment with minimal notice. Who knows what's next? The answer to that question arrived unexpectedly the following morning. As Olivia prepared breakfast for the twins, her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Ms. Reeves, this is James Blackwood from Dr. Matthews' team. I need to speak with you urgently, privately, not through official channels. It concerns federal interest in your property and information not shared during our initial visit. Please call this number if you're willing to meet. The cryptic message only deepened Olivia's sense that there were layers to this situation beyond what any party had fully disclosed. After consulting briefly with Ryan, she replied requesting more information before agreeing to any meeting. Blackwood's response was equally cryptic. I previously worked for agencies with specific interest in Clayton's network. My current role? with the Historical Society represents a different approach to historical justice. The federal team's interest goes beyond historical preservation. Before you make any decisions, you deserve complete context that only I can provide. As Olivia considered this mysterious outreach, she discovered Lily standing in the doorway, a school library book clutched to her chest. The cover showed an old photograph of miners standing before a wooden structure remarkably similar to their. "A barn, Mom," Lily said with surprising solemnity. "I found something about our house in this history book. It talks about the people's depositories that protected miners from corrupt banks in the 1890s. Look at this picture. It's almost exactly like our barn." Taking the book, Olivia found herself staring at a historical photograph she hadn't encountered in her own research. The caption read, "Suspected location of one of Jesse Clayton's people's depositories. Alternative banking facilities operated during the mining conflicts of 1890-1895. This structure outside Central City reportedly housed both secure storage and community meeting spaces where miners organized against corporate consolidation efforts." The barn in the photograph shared the distinctive architectural features of their own structure, the same roofline, similar timber framing, and notably, a stone foundation that appeared to extend deeper than typical agricultural buildings of the era. "There were lots of these buildings," Lily explained, flipping to another page showing a map. "The book says they formed a network across Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. They weren't just for storing gold. They were community centers where miners could meet safely without company spies." As Olivia examined the historical account, published by a small regional press rather than mainstream historical organizations, she felt pieces clicking into place. The narrative aligned remarkably with Harold's family account while providing broader historical context for Clayton's activities beyond simple outlawry. She showed the book to Ryan, who examined it with growing interest. "This supports the alternative historical narrative Harold described. Clayton wasn't just a bank robber, he was operating what amounted to a community banking system during a period of intense conflict between individual miners and corporate interests. And our barn may be one of the few intact structures remaining from that network," Olivia realized, "which would explain both the historical and federal interest." "Mom," Lily asked, watching their reactions carefully, "does this mean our house is famous, like historically important?" Olivia hugged her daughter, recognizing that their lives had irrevocably intersected with historical currents far beyond their initial expectations. "It means we've become caretakers of something more significant than we realized, honey. And we need to make careful decisions about how to honor that responsibility." As Ryan continued examining the historical text, Olivia composed a careful response to Blackwood, agreeing to meet the following day with the condition that Ryan would be present. Whatever secrets lay beneath their barn had remained sealed for 130 years, protected by sophisticated security measures and family discretion across generations. Now, as competing interests converged on their property, she found herself in the unexpected position of determining which historical narrative would ultimately prevail. The simple barn she had purchased to provide affordable housing had connected her to a contested chapter of Western history, one where official accounts and lived experiences diverged dramatically. As federal agents deployed scanning technology, historians documented architectural features, and descendants of those originally involved offered alternative perspectives. Olivia recognized that her renovation project had become something far more consequential, a potential pivot point for historical understanding and possibly even justice long delayed. Whatever lay sealed in Jesse Clayton's vault had been preserved for a purpose. Whether that purpose would finally be fulfilled and under whose authority remained to be determined. The peaceful home she had sought for her family now stood at the intersection of powerful historical currents, with her decisions potentially reshaping not just their living situation, but historical narratives that had persisted for generations. The meeting with James Blackwood took place at a small cafe in town rather than at the barn, a precaution Olivia insisted upon given the increasingly complex situation. Ryan sat beside her, his engineering mind already analyzing the various claims and counterclaims surrounding the vault. Blackwood arrived precisely on time, carrying only a thin leather portfolio and the same careful demeanor Olivia had noticed. During his first visit, "Thank you for meeting me," he began, once they had ordered coffee and confirmed they wouldn't be overheard. "What I'm about to share isn't officially sanctioned by any current employer, but represents information I believe you deserve as the property owner caught between competing interests." "Before we go further," Olivia interjected, "I'd like clarity on exactly who you are. Your expertise seemed unusually specific during the initial assessment." Blackwood nodded, accepting the challenge. "Fair enough. Until 3 years ago, I worked for the Treasury Department's Historical Assets Division, a specialized unit that tracks unrecovered government financial assets from throughout American history. My focus was specifically the Western Territories between 1870 and 1900, with particular emphasis on the Clayton network." "So you were essentially hunting for the gold from the Great Western Express robbery," Ryan surmised. "Among other unresolved cases, yes. I spent 15 years investigating Clayton's security systems, documentation methods, and the network of structures like your barn." Blackwood sipped his coffee before continuing. "What changed my perspective was discovering journals, similar to what Harold Wilcox shared with you, first-hand accounts that contradicted official narratives about those events." "Why leave the Treasury Department?" Olivia asked. "Professional disagreement about historical justice," Blackwood replied simply. "After finding evidence that much of what the government classified as stolen gold had in fact been unlawfully seized from independent miners through fraudulent assessments, I advocated for revising our approach. When that position wasn't received, well, I resigned and joined Dr. Matthews' historical documentation efforts. And the Bureau of Land Management team, where do they factor in?" Blackwood's expression tightened. "Agent Carson comes from the same division I left, but maintains the traditional position that all assets from the 1893 incident remain rightfully government property, regardless of their original provenance. Their accelerated interest suggests they've learned something specific about your vault's contents." "From Harold's visit?" Ryan questioned. "Possibly, though they've maintained surveillance on the Wilcox family for generations. More likely, they've decoded enough from their scans to recognize signature elements of Clayton's security systems." Olivia leaned forward, processing this information. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Blackwood?" "That you're facing a complex situation with both historical and legal dimensions. The BLM team isn't merely documenting historical features. They're actively seeking to secure what they consider federal assets while preventing alternative historical narratives from gaining legitimate documentation." "And what's your interest?" Ryan asked pointedly. "Why risk your position with the Historical Society to have this conversation?" Blackwood opened his portfolio and removed several photographs. "Because I believe historical justice matters. These are images from 2 other Clayton network sites discovered in the past 50 years. In both cases, federal intervention resulted in forced entry attempts that triggered destruction mechanisms, damaging or destroying both historical artifacts and financial records that could have reshaped our understanding of that period. The photographs showed vault rooms similar to Olivia's, but with clear damage to both the mechanisms and contents, burned documents, melted metal, and compromised structural elements. Clayton designed his security system specifically to prevent seizure by the same authorities who had initially sanctioned the fraudulent assessments against minors, Blackwood explained. Each vault includes protection mechanisms that render contents unusable if improper access is attempted. Your site appears to be the most intact example discovered to date. Why are you telling us this? Olivia asked, though she suspected the answer. Because I believe Harold Wilcox's offer regarding the combination device represents the best chance for proper historical documentation and ethical disposition of the contents. Federal approaches have consistently failed to preserve the historical record intact. Ryan studied the photographs with professional interest. These destruction mechanisms, they're triggered by forced entry attempts? Precisely. Clayton was an engineering genius decades ahead of his time. His vaults were designed with multiple fail-safes that activate when conventional forcing methods are applied. That's why the BLM's scanning approach is particularly concerning. They're likely mapping the system to attempt bypass methods. This aligned with Olivia's own concerns following the federal team's visit. What would you recommend? Meet with Harold again, with proper legal representation present. Secure an agreement that prioritizes historical documentation and ethical disposition before federal pressure potentially forces less optimal approaches. Blackwood hesitated before adding, and consider accelerating the timeline. The scanning data gives federal agencies information they've never had before about these systems. After Blackwood departed, Olivia and Ryan spent the drive home discussing implications. The competing narratives had evolved beyond academic disagreement to potentially imminent action that could impact both historical understanding and Olivia's and property rights. I think we need to meet with this attorney immediately, not later this week, Ryan suggested, and probably hear Harold's complete proposal, including the location of this sequence template. Agreed, Olivia replied. Whatever's happening is accelerating beyond my control. I need to understand my legal position before making any commitments. Through a series of urgent calls, Olivia arranged to meet Catherine Vega the following morning, then contacted Harold to request a follow-up discussion later that same day. Both readily agreed, suggesting everyone recognized the situation's increasing urgency. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Olivia and Ryan conducted their own careful examination of the vault room, documenting everything with photographs and measurements before federal restrictions potentially limited their access. The strange symbols around the metal plate's perimeter particularly intrigued Ryan, who attempted to identify patterns or sequences. These aren't random decorations, he observed, photographing each segment. They're organized in what appears to be specific groupings. If Harold's description is accurate, a template overlay would identify which symbols need to be activated and in what sequence. Like a combination lock, but using symbols instead of numbers, Olivia suggested. Exactly. And likely with decoy patterns incorporated to trigger protective mechanisms if attempted incorrectly. The meeting with Catherine Vega proved illuminating, if not entirely reassuring. The attorney specialized in contested historical discoveries and arrived with thorough preparation regarding both Olivia's property rights and the competing claims potentially affecting the vault. Your situation sits at a fascinating intersection of property law, historical preservation requirements, potential treasure trove statutes, and federal claims regarding historical assets, she explained, reviewing documents at Olivia's kitchen table. The good news is that as property owner, you maintain certain fundamental rights regarding access and disposition. The complicated news is that various specialized regulations create overlapping jurisdictions depending on what exactly is contained within the vault. What about the BLM's claim of federal jurisdiction? Ryan asked. Contestable but not dismissible, Catherine replied frankly. Their claim relies on the historical narrative that the assets originated from a government shipment. If evidence supports the alternative narrative that the contents represent privately owned assets fraudulently seized from individual miners, their jurisdictional claim weakens considerably. Which is precisely why proper historical documentation matters, Olivia noted, connecting various perspectives she'd heard. Exactly. From a strategic legal perspective, your strongest position comes from supporting comprehensive historical documentation while maintaining property owner rights throughout the process. Catherine tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. The Wilcox family's proposed agreement potentially serves this approach, particularly if modified to explicitly preserve your property interests. With this legal framework established, Olivia felt better prepared for Harold's return visit that afternoon. This time, he arrived with both his nephew Michael and a small locked case that instantly drew everyone's attention. After introductions and a brief summary of the legal consultation, Harold placed the case on the table. I believe it's time to share the full context of what my family has preserved for generations, he said, his voice stronger than during previous visits, including the combination device my grandfather entrusted to our care. He unlocked the case and carefully removed an object wrapped in aging leather. Unwrapping it revealed a brass device, approximately 8 inches in diameter, a circular plate with precisely cut apertures and markings that immediately suggested alignment with the symbols surrounding the vault's metal plate. Clayton called it a reader disc, Harold explained. When properly positioned against reference points on the vault, the apertures reveal which symbols must be activated and in what sequence. Ryan studied the device with professional appreciation. This is remarkably sophisticated for the 1870s. The precision engineering required would have been exceptional for the period. Clayton collaborated with a Swiss watchmaker and mechanical engineer named Heinrich Müller, Harold explained. Together, they developed security systems far beyond conventional technology of the era, specifically designed to protect assets from the same authorities who had sanctioned their original seizure. Catherine examined the disc with legal rather than technical interest, and this device has remained in your family's possession continuously since the 1890s. With documented provenance through family records, Michael confirmed, producing a leather-bound ledger, including transfer acknowledgements, signed by each generation's custodian. As they discussed the implications of this revelation, Olivia noticed something about the brass disc that connected to her earlier discovery. The marking I found in the vault room, the crossed mining picks with the small key or tool above them, it matches this symbol here on the reader disc. Harold nodded with approval. You found one of the alignment markers. There are 3 specific points that must be identified before the reader disc can be properly positioned. Finding one without being told suggests you were meant to be involved. In this discovery, the conversation shifted to the practical and legal framework for potentially accessing the vault. Catherine proposed modifications to the Wilcox family's original agreement, strengthening Olivia's property rights while acknowledging the historical trust nature of any documented assets within the vault. Dr. Matthews, joining them later in the afternoon, contributed provisions for proper historical documentation according to current best practices. The critical question remains timing, Harold noted as the agreement took shape. Federal interest appears to be intensifying, potentially limiting our options if we delay too long. I'm concerned about that as well, Dr. Matthews admitted. Historical sites like this have sometimes been compromised when agencies prioritized recovery over preservation. After careful consideration and legal review, Olivia made her decision. We'll proceed with a supervised, documented attempt to properly access the vault using the historical mechanism. Catherine will file the necessary notifications to both state and federal agencies, establishing our legal framework for historical documentation. When? Harold asked simply. Tomorrow morning, Olivia replied, before federal restrictions potentially escalate based on their scan data. We'll document everything thoroughly, with multiple witnesses representing different perspectives. The preparations continued late into the evening. Catherine drafted and filed the necessary legal notifications. Dr. Matthews arranged for proper documentation equipment and conservation materials in case fragile historical documents were discovered. Harold and Michael reviewed the precise operational sequence for the reader disc, which had never been used in living memory but had been carefully preserved along with detailed instructions. Ryan coordinated the technical aspects, ensuring proper lighting, recording capability, and structural support for the vault room's historic features. Through it all, Olivia balanced practical concerns about their home renovation with the growing recognition that they had become stewards of something historically significant beyond their initial expectations. The twins, aware that something important was happening but not privy to all details, approached her before bedtime with questions. "Is tomorrow when they'll try to open the circle in the floor?" Zoe asked directly. "Yes," Olivia acknowledged, seeing no point in denial given the obvious preparations. "Several experts will be here to document everything properly." "Can we watch?" Lily asked eagerly. "It's part of our house's history." After consideration, Olivia agreed they could observe from a safe distance, with the understanding that they would follow all safety instructions. Their home had evolved far beyond a simple renovation project, becoming intertwined with historical narratives that would now include their family's chapter. Morning arrived with clear autumn skies and a sense of momentous anticipation. By 8 o'clock, the documentation team had transformed the vault room with professional lighting, recording equipment, and conservation materials. Dr. Matthews supervised the historical documentation aspects, while Catherine maintained records of all. Proceedings for legal purposes. Harold arrived with Michael and the reader disc, moving with surprising energy despite his age. "I've waited my entire life for this moment," he explained when Olivia commented on his vigor. "3 generations of my family have preserved this knowledge without ever seeing the vault opened." James Blackwood arrived shortly thereafter, his presence requested by both Dr. Matthews and Olivia, given his unique knowledge of Clayton's security systems. He immediately began examining the vault's visible features with focused attention, consulting occasionally with Harold about specific details from family records. By 9:30, with all necessary protocols established and recording equipment activated, they were ready to attempt proper access using the historical mechanism. The twins watched from the stairway with Ryan beside them, maintaining safe distance while ensuring clear sightlines to the historic moment. "The first step," Harold explained for the official record, "involves identifying 3 specific reference points mentioned in my grandfather's instructions. One has already been located by Ms. Reeves, the crossed mining picks with the key symbol." Blackwood, applying his specialized knowledge, quickly identified the second reference point, a small star pattern almost invisible unless viewed at precisely the correct angle with proper lighting. The third required careful cleaning of accumulated grime from a section of stonework, revealing a subtle compass rose design carved into the granite. "These 3 points create the alignment triangle," Harold continued, positioning the reader disc carefully. "When the disc is properly oriented to these references, the apertures reveal which symbols must be activated and in what sequence. With the disc finally positioned correctly, a specific pattern emerged, 7 symbols, highlighted through the precisely cut apertures, with directional indicators suggesting the activation sequence. The activation requires physical pressure on specific points of the metal plate," Harold explained, referencing his grandfather's instructions. Each symbol must be pressed in the correct sequence with appropriate pressure, essentially operating as a sophisticated combination lock. Blackwood, with his specialized background, volunteered to perform the actual sequence, his trained fingers applying precise pressure to each symbol in turn. As the final symbol was activated, a barely audible click resonated from within the mechanism, followed by a more substantial sound of internal components shifting. "It's released the primary lock," Blackwood confirmed, stepping back respectfully. "According to documented patterns of similar vaults, the plate should now be able to be rotated counterclockwise to access the secondary opening mechanism." Harold, as the family custodian, was given the honor of this step. With careful movements, belying his age, he grasped recessed handholds that had become accessible after the lock release and slowly rotated the massive metal plate. The precision engineering of the 130-year-old mechanism remained remarkably functional, the plate turning smoothly until reaching a preset stop point. "The secondary mechanism should now be exposed," Harold noted, referring again to family instructions, "a manual crank system that raises the interior platform." Indeed, the rotation had revealed a recessed area containing a folding handle attached. To geared mechanics. Blackwood examined this carefully before explaining. "This is characteristic of Clayton's designs, multiple security layers requiring specific knowledge rather than force. The raising mechanism prevents contents from being damaged during access while making improper entry attempts obvious." After thorough documentation of this intermediate stage, Harold and Blackwood together operated the crank mechanism, which turned with initial resistance before settling into smooth operation. Everyone present could hear mechanical components engaging below the floor as the interior platform gradually rose toward the opening. The first visible contents emerged slowly into view: a wooden chest with brass fittings, followed by several leather document portfolios, metal containers with official-looking seals, and finally a central pedestal supporting what appeared to be a ledger bound in red leather with gold embossing. As the platform locked into its fully raised position, the assembled witnesses fell momentarily silent, absorbing the historic significance of what they were seeing. Contents sealed away for 130 years, preserved through generations of careful custodianship and sophisticated engineering. "Dr. Matthews broke the silence, her professional training asserting itself. "We need to document everything precisely as found before any items are moved or examined. The contextual arrangement may have historical significance beyond the individual contents." For the next 2 hours, the team meticulously photographed, measured, and catalogued each visible item without disturbing its position. The wooden chest, sealed with multiple locks, occupied the most prominent position. The leather portfolios appeared to contain documents organized by some systematic method, with labeled tabs visible along their edges. The metal containers bore governmental seals from the 1890s, along with security markings suggesting official origins. But it was the central ledger that drew the most significant attention. Titled, "The People's Depository, Reconciliation Records." In gold lettering, it appeared to be the primary documentation of whatever financial or historical arrangements the vault had been created to preserve. "According to my grandfather's instructions," Harold explained, as they completed the preliminary documentation, "this ledger contains the comprehensive record of all assets secured within the vault, including their original ownership, the circumstances of their consolidation, and the intended disposition once secured from fraudulent seizure." With the initial documentation complete, Catherine established the legal framework for preliminary examination of contents. "We've now officially documented the proper historical access to these materials as part of a supervised historical conservation effort. All contents remain in situ, while preliminary, non-invasive examination provides context for proper preservation. Measures. Dr. Matthews, with specialized conservation gloves and appropriate tools, carefully opened the central ledger, revealing immaculately preserved pages filled with precise handwriting. The opening text, dated April 17, 1893, provided immediate historical context. This record establishes the complete accounting of assets secured within Depository Number 7 following recovery from fraudulent seizure during the Central Transportation Incident of March 30, 1893. All items are catalogued with original ownership documentation, circumstances of original seizure, and intended restoration protocols. This record serves as both historical documentation and legal testament to the rightful disposition of these assets, should circumstances allow their eventual return to legitimate owners or their descendants. The ledger continued with detailed inventories, ownership records, and narrative accounts of how various assets had been recovered during what history recorded as the Great Western Express robbery. Page after page documented individual miners' holdings, family savings, and community funds that had apparently been seized through what the ledger described as fraudulent assessments coordinated between corrupt territorial officials and corporate mining interests. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Matthews breathed, carefully turning pages with conservation tools. A complete counter-narrative to the official historical record, documented in meticulous detail at the time of the events themselves. The wooden chest, when finally examined with appropriate conservation protocols, revealed exactly what the historical narrative suggested. Multiple canvas pouches containing gold coins and raw gold nuggets, each labeled with ownership documentation corresponding to entries in the central ledger. The metal containers held official documents apparently seized during the same operation, assessment records, fraudulent court orders, and correspondence between government officials and mining company executives detailing the coordinated effort to seize independent miners' assets. "This isn't just treasure," Blackwood observed as the documentation continued. "It's comprehensive evidence of a historical injustice, preserved specifically to counter the official narrative that portrayed Clayton and his associates as simple outlaws." The leather portfolios contained additional documentation, personal statements from affected miners and their families, newspaper accounts of both the original seizures and the subsequent robbery, and detailed maps of the entire network of people's depositories across the Western Territories. By late afternoon, the preliminary documentation had established the vault's contents as perhaps the most significant historical discovery related to Western mining conflicts in decades. The coherent counter-narrative, supported by both physical evidence and meticulous contemporary documentation, presented compelling evidence that would fundamentally reshape historical understanding of events long characterized as simple criminality. "The legal implications are profound," Catherine noted as they reviewed the findings. "This evidence substantially undermines federal claims to these assets based on the traditional historical narrative. The documented provenance establishes private ownership subsequently protected from fraudulent seizure, not government property stolen by outlaws." As the day's documentation concluded, Olivia found herself in an unexpected position, de facto custodian of historical evidence that would likely transform understanding of Western development during a critical period. What had begun as a desperate solution to housing insecurity had connected her family to historical currents of justice, preservation, and contested narratives spanning generations. The federal response came predictably quickly. By the following morning, Agent Carson arrived with an expanded team and formal documentation asserting federal interest in the discovered materials. However, Catherine's legal preparation and the thoroughly documented historical context provided through proper access significantly strengthened Olivia's position. The materials remain in situ for proper historical documentation, Catherine informed the federal representatives firmly. Any claims regarding specific contents must be pursued through appropriate legal channels rather than administrative assertions of jurisdiction. Over the following weeks, a complex but ultimately productive collaboration emerged between competing interests. The Colorado Historical Society, with Dr. Matthews' leadership, supervised comprehensive documentation of all materials. Federal agencies participated in the process, but found their jurisdictional claims increasingly weakened as the historical evidence contradicted traditional narratives about the origins and nature of the secured assets. Most significantly, the detailed ownership records preserved within the vault enabled identification of descendants of many original owners, mining families whose assets had been protected rather than stolen, contrary to historical accounts. 3 months after the initial discovery, with renovation work on the main living spaces continuing around the historical documentation project, Olivia hosted a remarkable gathering in her partially completed home. Representatives from several historical mining families, identified through the vault records and contacted through genealogical research, joined historians, legal experts, and community members to establish the Clayton Network Historical Trust. What we've discovered isn't simply historical artifacts or financial assets, Olivia explained to the assembled group. It's a testament to ordinary people who created alternative systems when official institutions failed them, who preserved not just gold but truth across generations until it could be properly revealed. The Trust established protocols for both historical preservation and appropriate disposition of identified assets. In many cases, items of purely historical significance would be preserved in museum collections with proper context and attribution. Financial assets with documented provenance would be managed through a combination of historical preservation and benefit to identified descendants. For Olivia and her family, the outcome transcended the financial implications, though these proved significant. The barn's historical designation opened access to preservation grants that substantially supported their renovation efforts. The legal settlement regarding her property rights as discovery site included provisions that secured her ownership, while accommodating appropriate historical access and documentation. Most meaningfully, their home became not just a renovated structure, but a living historical site. The twins giving occasional guided tours to historical society visitors, Ryan developing engineering demonstrations of Clayton's remarkable security systems, and Olivia finding unexpected purpose in connecting families to historical legacies long obscured by dominant narratives. On the 1-year anniversary of their purchase, with the main living spaces beautifully renovated and the historical vault area properly preserved as a documented historical site, Olivia sat with her daughters on their front porch, watching sunset colors play across the barn's weathered timbers. "When I bought this place, I was just looking for affordable housing," she reflected. "I never imagined becoming part of rewriting history." "It's like the barn chose us," Lily suggested, her imagination undimmed by months of historical documentation and legal proceedings, like it was waiting for someone who would understand why it was built. Zoe, ever practical, had a different perspective. "It's more that you were willing to look beyond what everyone else saw. Other people just saw a falling down barn. You saw possibilities." Both perspectives held truth, Olivia realized. The dilapidated structure that had represented desperate financial compromise had revealed layers of purpose and significance beyond anything she could have anticipated. The home she had created for her family now stood as both personal sanctuary and historical testament, a place where alternative narratives found voice after generations of silence. Harold Wilcox, who had visited regularly throughout the documentation process, perhaps summarized it best during his most recent visit. After watching the twins proudly demonstrate the vault's remarkable security mechanisms to visitors from the Historical Society, he had turned to Olivia with unexpected emotion. "My grandfather would be profoundly satisfied," he said quietly. "He maintained this legacy without ever knowing if its purpose would be fulfilled. You've completed the circle," he began, "not just preserving history, but restoring truth to its rightful place." As darkness fell and they moved inside to their beautifully renovated kitchen, once a desperate makeshift arrangement, now a warm family center with exposed original timbers complementing modern amenities, Olivia reflected on how completely their lives had transformed. The housing insecurity that had driven her desperate property search had evolved into not just stable ownership, but meaningful connection to history, community, and purpose. The converted barn had become exactly what she had initially sought: a secure home for her family. Yet it had also become something she never could have anticipated, a pivotal site in historical reconciliation, revealing truths preserved through generations, specifically for discovery at the right moment, and by the right people. As she looked around at the beautifully restored timber framing, the historical photographs now tastefully displayed, alongside family pictures and the subtle integration of modern living with historical preservation, Olivia recognized that their home embodied exactly what Clayton's network had originally represented: the possibility of creating alternative systems when conventional approaches failed to serve human needs. The exhausted paramedic who had impulsively called about a weathered "for sale" sign had found not just affordable housing, but unexpected purpose. The dilapidated barn had been transformed not just through physical renovation, but through reconnection with its original significance. And the mysterious vault that had remained sealed for 130 years had finally fulfilled its purpose, preserving not just gold, but truth, until the right moment for its revelation. "We should probably start dinner," Olivia said, rising from her contemplation. "Ryan and Dr. Matthews will be here soon to discuss next month's historical conference presentation." As her daughters helped prepare the meal in their renovated kitchen, Olivia glanced toward the carefully preserved stairway leading to the vault room below, now officially designated as a historical site of national significance. The simple home she had desperately sought had connected them to historical currents far beyond her initial expectations, transforming not just their living situation, but their understanding of how ordinary people throughout history had created extraordinary solutions to the challenges of their times. The barn that had once represented her financial compromise had become something far more meaningful, a bridge between past and present, a testament to alternative historical narratives, and most importantly, a true home where her family would create their own legacy for future generations to discover. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.